Hi, and welcome to the Zoom call for February. Let's just dive right in. We have some good questions here today. Okay, so first one, I'll just go through this chronologically. Rolf asks, would you mind walking us through any day from your past week? What does the day look like in terms of food, meal timing, activity, and training? Okay, so first off, I'm not really sure it helps anyone to just look at what I'm doing because you can't copy my template. This is works for me, and I've arrived at this schedule because it works for me. And especially when it comes to food choices and macros and calories and everything, unless you have copied my exact life for the last few months, then this won't work for you. But as a general overview, I'm happy to share, of course. So I just wrote it down in the Microsoft document. This is a typical day for me. Awake at 5, sometimes earlier, have a coffee, start writing immediately. I kind of have to because my son gets up at 7 and I have to get in some time to work before that because from 7 to about 9 o'clock, it's very difficult. I'm interrupted all the time, and he needs to have his breakfast, and I have to get him ready for school. So I eat my first meal around 6 to 7 a.m. Usually get hungry around 6. Usually root veggies, meat and or eggs, some omega-3 source, oysters or mackerel. Approximately 60 grams of carbs, sometimes a little more if I have some fruits, 60 grams of protein and 20 grams of fats. I drive my son to school at 8 a.m. and I'm back home a little before 9. Then I'm just walking on the step mill while I work, getting 4 to 5,000 steps, or sometimes I just prefer to take a walk if the weather is nice, get some fresh air, do some breathing, and I either listen to a podcast or just do that in complete silence to disconnect. Lunch around 10 to 11 a.m. Usually some carb source like sweet potato, potato or rice, some additional fruits if I feel like it. Usually chicken or pork, olives or avocado as a fat source, a little dark chocolate sometimes. I increase my carbs here because it's my pre-workout meal. 200 grams of carbs, same protein. I just have the same protein for all meals. 20 grams of fats. Then I do emails and Zoom calls, meetings, calls, whatever. Read some studies or whatever. It just depends on the day and the schedule. These things are usually planned a day in advance to be as efficient as possible. Work out between 1 to 3 p.m., depending on how much work I need to get finished. I have some extra fruits before and after, a little snack like dark chocolate. I either have some essential amino acids. I have some whey shake afterwards or milk protein isolate of some sort, depending on what I feel like. Post-workout meal. So usually I just have some essential amino acids with some fruits before the workout, and then I just go home and eat, have a regular meal. It's usually the same as meal 2, some candy or chocolate while I make food. Now this is, since I have room for a lot of calories right now, not when I'm dieting. It can also be some variation of, cottage cheese, milk protein powder that I mix into a thick porridge. I might have some oatmeal here. Just depends. But, these days I'm kind of tired of the protein powders and I like to eat food. So it's usually the same as meal 3. Read, reflect, research, books, answer comments on social media. Usually takes a while. My inbox is usually full. Final meal around 6 p.m., usually no later than 7 p.m. So I just ate like 1 hour ago, same as meal 2 and 3. Tend to have slightly lower fats for digestive purposes. Sometimes also slightly less carbs, depending on if I had more carbs after workouts or before the workout. I kind of go by feeler. It's not static or predetermined. So these are my current total calories, carbs, proteins, and fats. Family time until bedtime. Today is obviously Zoom time. I had one for the Norwegian program at 5, from 5 to 6. Had dinner, and here I am. Then I just read some more, relax, and usually I'm asleep by 9 p.m. Hopefully. Sometimes a little later, depends on how much coffee I had during the day. That's a typical day, and most days are like this. Obviously, I have some days where I have to travel a little. Not much these days, but you know, there can be periods where I have um, a lot of traveling, so it just all depends. So that's a typical day for me. Not much to add there. If you have any questions, let me know. That's what my life looks like right now, at least. Okay, next question. What is something you're doing now that you weren't doing earlier or you were neglecting earlier? I believe I've mentioned this before. I'm doing more cardio than before. I'm also having more carbs and less fats than before. So that's what I was neglecting. I'm also like the last 3 to 4 months, I would say, is my routine has changed to what it currently is, which I feel is the most productive for me. I'm able to do a lot of work early in the day, and I can spend my late afternoons and evenings just disconnecting, reading, reflecting. It really suits my own, um, you know, rhythm of productivity and creativity, and my energy is lower in the afternoon and evenings, so that's not a good time to try to come up with new stuff. Although I spontaneously tend to do that when I disconnect, but the earlier in the day is usually better for writing stuff and coming up with new stuff. And so it's about just being aware of my own rhythms and, you know, when am I the most productive and creative, and when do my brain starts to shut off and wants to rest, and just kind of be strict with that has been tremendously helpful. Having generally just more low intensity activity has also been a game changer. I used to be more of the low carb camp and used to believe that was the best for me, but my body just needed more time to adapt and also to stay at a certain calorie level. So I probably haven't eaten this much calories, sustained this calorie level for more than a few weeks at a time, and then immediately switch back to dieting because I will freak out. So that's something I should have been more consistent with before. Something I've changed my mind on in the past year or lately. Well, I not maybe changed my mind, but I've at least come to appreciate the individual variability when it comes to frequency, volume, proximity to failure. Just, I'm working on the Myo-Reps ebook now, and it's kind of forced me to really get the pieces of the model in place. So I feel like I have a better grasp of how things work on an individual basis. I've tried to summarize this in my latest few articles on the site, the interplay between proximity to failure and volume and how that connects with frequency. So I guess I'm way more accepting of the fact that there can be, you can train with higher volumes. Some can train and benefit from higher volumes, but frequency needs to drop to allow for that to happen. But some can actually respond better to that. I definitely seem to have found a middle ground, at least, with some moderate to high volumes, as long as I have an eye towards my proximity to failure. I can push hard, but I can't have high volumes. I can have slightly higher volumes, but I can have more reps in reserve. And kind of depending on where I'm at on the spectrum, I adapt to that. Sometimes I just feel like I want to push harder, but then I have to watch out for not pushing for volume and instead just do fewer sets. So it's more of an organic kind of thing with all of the understanding in place of the interplay between frequency, volume, proximity to failure, and also I'm way more convinced that Myo-Reps is effective and perhaps even a game changer. The more advanced you are, and especially if you haven't been training that type of training for a while, it can definitely reignite progress. So yeah, those are the overarching things that have changed my mind, or at least adapted my mind towards a more nuanced picture of the interaction between these variables and how they can be optimized on an individual basis. So I completely stand by the principles in the last program. That's essentially the same systematic process that have led me to where I'm at right now, where I feel comfortable, and things are working really well. So next question from Ed. I have been quite demotivated the last couple of years, what with COVID and other issues, but I recently got back into Instagram and started following your page again, and I feel inspired again. Really appreciate that. I'm glad to be an inspiration. I'm not much of a program hopper, so I try to find a program I like and stick with it for years. I bought your Myo-Reps ebook many years ago, and to be honest, I'm planning to stick with the upper-low routine probably for the rest of my life. So my question, with all of your most recent research and updates, particularly regarding effective reps and 4 to 6 sets per muscle group per workout, is there much you would vary on how you wrote the original program for an over 50s male and onwards? I will basically train Monday, Wednesday, Friday, upper, lower, alternating with 30 minutes light cardio on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. In the original program, some of the rep ranges were slightly higher, especially the Myo-Rep sets, than the effective reps model suggests. Would you lower these ranges, or as I'm older, keep them higher? Hope that makes sense. I actually think for the 50s plus lifter, I was planning to do a YouTube video on this. It got postponed for a while. I hope to get back to it soon. There's also a module in the last program that explains the different changes for when you age and how you should accommodate that. Like connective tissue health can be compromised. So there's both an argument for increasing frequency because connective tissue perhaps need more frequent stimulation, but since you also generate more inflammation, that kind of indicates we should lower frequency. So it's the same volume frequency interaction riddle that you kind of need to solve on an individual basis. You say that some of the rep ranges were slightly higher than the effective reps model suggests. The effective reps model only suggests that the lighter loads you're lifting, the closer to failure you need to be training. it doesn't really suggest rep ranges. So I stand by the original recommendation that if Myo-Reps really shines at high reps, so if you're doing lighter loads, you definitely need to train slightly closer to failure, but not to failure. You need to manage fatigue to get in as many effective reps as possible in the Myo-Reps mini sets. I have kind of, if you've read the Myo-Reps article, the updated article, I tend to think that we should probably, due to the subjective perception of fatigue and exhaustion that can limit our ability to recruit muscle fibers at really high reps because it's painful and it's, affects the cardiovascular system. And so it can be limiting to train to do more than 20 reps in the set. So I kind of tend to recommend that Myo-Reps should be done between 8 to 15 reps, maybe 10 to 15 reps. That would be like a good sweet spot. And below 8 reps, you probably don't benefit much from doing Myo-Reps. You can if you want to, but in that loading range, heavier than 8 rep max, I think just having 1 to 2 reps in reserve and doing sets of 5 to 8 reps, maybe 4 to 6 even, is far more productive, both for strength and hypertrophy. So as you age, there are changes to the nervous system, to motor unit recruitment, and the connective tissue, hormones, that we should probably be, controlling rep speed, slowing down, having more proper reception, use more stability. Although we should be working on balance, we probably shouldn't be doing a lot of free weight squats or freestanding Bulgarian split squats, things that challenge our balance, because the more we challenge our balance, since our nervous system is changing and aging, we're less able to recruit and train muscle fibers appropriately. So we need to, for loading, we need more stability. For balance, we need less load. So a combination of that is probably a good idea. Some type of medicine ball throws and jumping, more explosive type lifting in like a very low volume of that to preserve some type of neural efficiency is probably also a good idea as you age. But you probably shouldn't expect much from that. It's more to preserve and maintain. Other than that, so exercise choices more towards stability end of the spectrum, slightly higher reps, slower reps. But if you're training slower reps, slowing down rep speed, controlling rep speed, you can stay with the same reps because you're kind of automatically reducing your loads to allow for that. So I think those would be the major changes as we age. But I'm a big fan of upper lower alternating on the Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule. And I also don't think you should be training with more than 4 to 6 sets. Kawan, I think that's the correct pronunciation. Hi, I'm a medical student from Brazil, and I really like the content you provide. I try to apply it as much as I can. My question is how to train neck and trapezius properly. Okay, so the traps, elevate, retract the scapula. This direction, it's like a fan-shaped muscle, so it goes in different directions. Controls the scapula this direction, straight back, also down. It also helps in elevating the shoulders like this, so face pulls. A standing shrug, you have to kind of lean slightly forward and pull a little, retract shoulders a little. That would hit upper traps. Trap 3, 4, they're pointing downwards from the scapula, do some type of Y raise or face pull, even pull down, chin-ups, and some retraction exercise, so Kelso shrugs, just lying on an incline bench or flat bench and squeezing your shoulder blades, but all types of rows as well. Really hits all parts of the trapezius. Neck muscles, there are machines for that. You have this a harness you can put on your head, put weight plates on to train in different directions. You can also just, use a towel or something soft, and you can use hand resistance, elastic resistance, weight plates that, lie sideways on the bench or on the back and just lift your head in different directions. So those would be my recommendations. Just, look at an anatomy chart and see the line of pull of the different segments of the trapezius and the neck, and just imagine that you need to shorten that muscle, shorten and lengthen that muscle. So what type of movements will do that? And that's generally going to hit the spot. Okay, next question from Lisa. Thanks for the opportunity to submit questions. I'm a 48-year-old woman who started strength training a little over a year and a half ago. I've been following the lean gains approach to weight training, 3 times per week, reverse pyramid training, 2 compound lifts and 3 accessory moves since October. I don't intermittent fast, but I tend to eat my last meal between 5 to 5:30. I get up at 5:30 a.m., have water and coffee, then work out fasted from 6 a.m. I eat breakfast once my workout is done, and that usually consists of 2 large eggs, 200 grams of egg whites, 130 grams of low-fat cottage cheese, 5 grams of flax, and 16 grams of oats. 16 grams of oats, okay. Blended into pancakes with approximately 30 grams of berries and 5 grams of natural peanut butter. I eat around 1,450 and 1,500 calories a day, except on Saturdays when I usually go out to dinner. My questions are, what are your views on fasted lifting? I'm not usually hungry so early and don't have time to wait for food to digest, which is why I don't eat beforehand. Fasted lifting, I think I've covered this in previous Zoom calls and in some of the modules. Generally not optimal. We need some type of protein in there at least. I can say that with a high degree of certainty. Carbs are probably not really necessary, but I would perhaps try some essential amino acids at least. That's, like just drinking fluid, basically. I do prefer to have some carbs to get blood sugar slightly up. Some feel like they have better workouts without it. But you can train fasted, but I do, for muscle building at least, recommend some type of easily digested amino acid source. Not branched chain amino acids. They don't seem to work really well, but essential amino acids or whey protein. Is that type of breakfast the right approach? I often find that I'm hungry before lunch. I eat breakfast around 9 a.m., but get hungry before noon. Yeah, that's not surprising because, this is way too little food. After a workout, even though the lean gains type workouts are really low volume and really short, relatively speaking, you need to eat more. Breakfast should probably be one of the largest meals if you're training early. And this is like, 16 grams of oats. What's that? That's like 10 grams of carbs, 15 grams of carbs. Maybe you should probably triple that, or at least have 50 grams of carbs for breakfast. And if you get hungry before noon, if the breakfast doesn't last for more than 2 hours, then you're just not eating enough. So that would be my first order of business. Make sure that you're actually eating. I also tend to think 1,500 calories. Well, you're 50 kilos, so sure, that's a good calorie range, but I would definitely increase carbs after breakfast or for breakfast, since it's after post-workout. I have made lean muscle gains, but the progress seems slow. Not sure if that's because I work out at home or if I'm not getting something right with my food training, or if that's just the way it is because of age, gender, working out at home. I have incremental plays, so once I hit 8 reps, I increase by 0.25 the next week. It's tricky to find information for women, especially my age group. I'm not in menopause yet. I don't think this is not an age thing. Well, I mean, you're 48, so you're getting to the point where it's getting close to menopause, but still, this is not an age thing. I think that the frequency is just too low on the lean gains approach for your needs, and you're also not eating enough. If you want to gain more muscle, you should probably eat more food. This is barely maintenance. I think, depending on your activity level, have more carbs for breakfast. If you want to gain muscle, I can say with a high degree of certainty that you need more carbs. Especially if you're lean, if you have a small frame, then I would start there with more food. Although you're not telling me what you're eating for the other meals, but make sure that your protein intake is maybe 100 grams per day, and I would at least have 120 grams of carbs per day and the rest from fats. It's good to have fats for women, but probably a higher frequency. I mean, why not try one of the suggested programs? I would actually try a full body split, or even the women's program, alternating, if you want to train 3 days per week. So this is probably not optimal for muscle gains. The frequency is just too low. If you want to continue with this frequency, you're probably going to have to try more volume. 3 sets, which the lean gains approach recommends on a reverse pyramid type setup, is, unless it's the bulking routine, I believe there's one bulking routine with the 4 sets, but 3 sets probably not enough for this frequency. So you're going to have to either increase volume or frequency, but I would suggest starting with a slightly higher frequency and see where that takes you, and then more food, especially on workout days. Okay, next from Hi. What would you consider the best supplements for muscle growth and general health? All right, so supplements I just don't care much about. I mean, I do take supplements. I just find food to be way more important, and the nutrient uptake and everything is just superior from foods. Nutrient density, first of all, but all right, I'll indulge your question here. So the most, first off, whenever there's a question about supplements, I strongly recommend examine.com. That's the best database for unbiased information, scientific backing, and overview of all of the supplements. And it's graded according to the hierarchy of evidence. How strong evidence do we have for this type of supplement? And the most ergogenic, so not muscle growth per se, because that's probably more a function of just generally eating enough food and having a correct stimulus for muscle growth. But we can say that creatine is number one, 3 to 5 grams per day. Maybe not expect amazing benefits from it, especially if you're already eating a lot of animal products, because there's a lot of creatine in there already. And if you're eating a high protein diet, and your creatine stores are probably close to maxed out, and There's a high inter-individual variability in response to creatine. Some are low responders, some are high responders and get a lot of benefit out of creatine. So it's highly individual, but it's, cheap, easy, simple. Just take a teaspoon per day, and no need for loading, no need for breaks. Just take it for life, I guess. There's a lot of interesting research on the cognitive benefits of creatine, so it's just, I take it every day just in case. Caffeine is obvious. It will increase workout performance. Unless you're a habitual coffee drinker, then you need probably uncomfortably high caffeine dosages, but it's general, good evidence to say that it can improve workout performance and cognitive function. So if you're not used to caffeine, then 50 to 100 milligrams goes a long way on workout days only, pre-workout, 30 to 60 minutes before. If you're drinking coffee regularly, then you probably need slightly more, although I wouldn't recommend going above 500 to 600 milligrams per day. That will affect sleep, and it's also habituating, so you tend to lose effects over time. Nitrates, interesting, but not really convincing, but it's still there. There are some studies showing that it can work. So tart cherry juice, there's something called red spinach, I believe. Beets are nitrate rich, some spinach, I think. You can also get supplements that supply this. Citrulline, beta-alanine, have some evidence. Beta-alanine, you need to consume 1 to 2 grams spread over several doses throughout the day. So it's kind of inconvenient if you want to. Doesn't really have all that much effect acutely if you only take it pre-workout, for instance. And since you get paresthesis, which is this tingling in the skin, if you take higher dosages, you need to spread out the daily recommended 4 to 6 gram dose into several doses. We have sodium bicarbonate, has some evidence for buffering lactate. So perhaps not the most applicable to strength training unless you're doing really high reps and high volumes. It can also have some digestive side effects, explosive diarrhea, basically, if you overdo it. So maybe not the best supplement for heavy deadlifts, I think. You could have an accident. So these are primarily, protein, obviously, omega-3s. Those are the primary ones, I think. Carbs, well, probably don't need them if you're already having sufficient carbs around workouts. Promising supplement is ashwagandha. There's a lot of research indicating that it can work for, general exercise performance. There's many benefits from ashwagandha. I personally don't get a lot from it, but some swear that they have noticeable benefits from it, so I will at least look into it. Of the ones that aren't really proven yet, a lot of subjective effects out there: alpha GPC, betaine, glutamine, HMB, rhodiola rosea, fenugreek, ginseng, tribulus. There will always be some that swear that this is, nectar from the gods, and some are just, I never felt anything from them. So, well-controlled studies are kind of all over the place. If you account for industry funding, then, there's not a lot of convincing evidence that these work. And don't even get me started on the Huberman protocol of Tongkat Ali and Fodoja agrestis. I have covered this on Instagram. Very, very, very weak evidence. And there are some individuals in social media that claim that it doubled their testosterone. There's just no research showing that this is the case. So you probably got something spiked with hormones if you got such dramatic increases in testosterone. Since no study have shown dramatic increases in testosterone, then I think it's bunk. Healthy aging or health. I mean, health is such a wide umbrella term. What is health? Generally, just cover nutrient deficiencies from a nutritious diet. If you get some blood testing, genetic testing, we're still in the infancy here of understanding the interactions. But if you're prone to have some sort of deficiency in something, then for sure it's beneficial to cover any deficits. First of all, that will be beneficial for health. Other than that, get your B vitamins, your vitamin D, especially during winter time. If you're Caucasian, vitamin B12. Some have deficiencies in some of the B vitamins, protein supplement, omega-3s, again, although I prefer it just eating seafood, fatty fish, oysters. Creatine, again, magnesium, vitamin K, DHEA. If you have a deficiency, again, for the aging population, have some benefits. Pregnenolone as well, the neurosteroids. Some of the cholinergics are interesting, alpha-GPC, although probably shouldn't be taking it every day. And choline is something you already get from eggs. So if you're eating at least 2 eggs per day, then you probably won't benefit much from it. But some do get benefits from alpha-GPC. There was a question in the chat here about NMN. Evidence is very weak. Nicotine amide. Sorry, I have to Google that. I can't remember. Like NAD supplements in general. And there's like some interesting rodent studies. It's very unimpressive. Really, really unimpressive. Some promising research for anti-aging, but I mean, there's very few human studies that show that we get some long-term benefits, reliable benefits from it. So I wouldn't waste my money on it, to be honest. I just don't think there's anything valuable. No nootropics. Some are interesting. Most of them are bunk. Seems to be the most variable of all. Like all of the cognitive enhancers. I think it depends on like the neurochemical balance. You know, serotonin, dopamine, individual genetic. Some are more prone to having low dopamine and serotonin than others, and that probably determines whether you respond to some of these nootropics that influence the neurotransmitters. So I guess it's worth trying some of them, but not expect much from it. So again, that's the typical when I do some research online, some swear by them and get so many benefits and just change their lives. Some just say, I felt nothing. There's a lot of fake stuff out there. There's a lot of overdosed stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff that's they have ingredients not listed on the label. It's probably something else that's providing the effect. So, I mean, just look at consumer reports and lab reports, and you'll see a lot of the supplements are spiked with other stuff, often illegal substances. And so it's a very, very unreliable field in general. Okay, those were actually all the questions. So I'll just give it a couple of more minutes. If there's more questions, just write them in the chat or unmute yourself if you have any more questions. Let me just check my emails here. If I forgot something, let me know. Okay, and I guess that's... Oh, here's more questions. Do you use periodization? How do you set it up? That's a module in the last program. So obviously I'm just not gonna cover that. I don't think there's any benefit other than, I mean, periodization, I've discussed having higher rep phases, maybe having strength phases. So generally just find a sweet spot in terms of rep ranges, and then once in a while have a week or 3 or 6 with either lower reps or higher reps. Although there's no strong evidence that this will improve results, I do have an intuition that a combination of higher and low reps is probably a good idea for long-term progress. Do you prefer a 4-day split? It doesn't matter what I prefer. I mean, I prefer the split that works best for you. So that's kind of the point of the last program. It's to systematically figure out what you respond best to. Doesn't matter what I prefer. I prefer, for now, my split. I covered it in the last Zoom call. I train 5 days per week. If I wasn't training 5 days per week, then I would, if I was training 4 days per week, I would do the upper lower split or a push-pull split. That would be the best frequency and volume for me. I would not do a 4-day split over 4 days. That's just too low frequency for most, like the typical bro split. So my current split, 5 days per week, is push-pull legs, rest. Then it's, I would say, an upper day, mainly back work, couple of sets on overhead press and a couple of sets on narrow or close grip Smith. And the other day is legs, and then I have a day of rest again and a repeat. So that's my current split that I have arrived at, going through the whole systematic process of full body training, upper lower, and push-pull, and adjusting the volume and frequency to figure out my upper and lower bounds of frequency and volume that I respond best to. If you want like an overarching grand bird's eye view of how I think when I set up and troubleshoot programs, then my last couple of articles on the site, not the very last article, but the one on troubleshooting plateaus, and the other one, I can't remember the title right now, but I've kind of provided the whole stimulus fatigue adaptation framework to view all training variables through, and how it's an individual thing that you need to figure out for yourself. There's no one else, no one in the world can tell you that. I can obviously work with you as a coach and we can systematically figure it out together, but it's always a matter of applying a certain volume, considering proximity to failure and rep ranges and the effects this has on, like, there's going to be a stimulus fatigue ratio for everything you do. So there's going to be a stimulus that is causing muscle growth. There's going to be an unavoidable consequence of fatigue, and you need to recover that fatigue before you can apply another stimulus, and that's going to determine your frequency. And so as we solve that puzzle, we arrive at the very best split for you. And since it's Lisa asking this, then my recommendation for you would be to go from the lean gain split to probably an alternating upper lower split right now, if you want to have equal focus on upper body and legs. like a separate day for legs. If you want to prioritize legs, then it would be a push-pull split where you train legs first in each workout. So just to sort of explain the overarching way to think about it. A split is just a way to apply volume and frequency to all muscle groups. What are your thoughts on the mental health crisis related to screen time and low dopamine? Oh boy. I could talk for hours about this, I think. My thoughts is that we should probably spend less time on social media. We should be aware of the effects of constantly, elevating our dopamine. Everything is about instant gratification and reward, and it has downstream effects. So being aware of that and breaking the cycle is probably going to be challenging. I have a 6-year-old. I can observe it in real time, how difficult it can be to, take his eyes off Netflix or Minecraft. But I can also observe the effect it has on his eating patterns, his mood, his behavior, and you can only imagine how the world will look if we don't understand the addictive nature of this and individual sensitivity, obviously. But I can, just for myself, speaking for myself, doom scrolling. I mean, it doesn't take more than a few minutes of scrolling, and I can actually mentally feel how it's draining me and physically feel how it's draining me and affecting my creativity and ability to take action on stuff. So it's a huge topic, but it's really important to be aware of and build good habits around systematically managing it. Steve asks, can Myo-Reps be done in the 5 to 8 rep range with singles and doubles in mini sets? Yes, but that's cluster training. So Myo-Reps turns into cluster training when it's sufficiently heavy, because then you're just doing, doubles, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, or 3, 3, 3. It's like the mini sets without activation set, because now you don't need activation sets because the weights are heavy, sufficiently heavy for not needing that. How much ashwagandha is needed to have an effect? I believe you need a minimum of 600 milligrams. Where would you buy it from? I live in Norway. I don't have any reliable sources for ashwagandha, but I tend to purchase from iHerb, the most, the biggest brands, Swanson, Life Extension, Now Foods, Jarrow formulas are probably the most reliable ones, since they are the biggest ones. Those will be my guesses. Do you time periodization, or do you just feel it and change on the way? Like I said, I don't really periodize anything. I have low reps and high reps in my program, and I change according to my progress. So you can pre-plan it, like every 6 to 8 weeks, introduce some new type of stimuli, or you can just have a certain balance and progress over time according to how you respond. I lean in the direction of preferring to have some type of low rep and high rep training at any one time, and the higher rep being of the Myo-Reps type for my programs. But from the last program templates, figuring out the sweet spot and then introducing at regular intervals some type of low rep or high rep training and see how you respond to that. But going forward, you could just as easily just maintain some sort of low rep. So for instance, I will do my first exercise and set with 3 to 5 reps. That's the heavy stuff. Perhaps do another one depending on the day or the muscle group. Then I will do some high rep stuff. And I usually finish off with some type of Myo-Rep exercise on isolation exercises on my split, of course. For other types of splits, full body splits, where you vary between, for instance, for chest, you would have perhaps a flat bench on one day and an incline bench on another day and flies on the third day. Then you could have the low rep stuff on the bench. You could have the moderate rep range on the inclines, and you can have the Myo-Reps on the pec flies, for instance. So it would be on separate days. It probably doesn't make a big difference. It seems as if all reps cause the same hypertrophy, just has a different effect on fatigue and recovery, inflammation, swelling, all that stuff. So it's kind of organic process. There's a Norwegian question here. How much mackerel is sufficient to cover the daily omega-3 needs if you're not taking supplements? Actually, the daily recommended intake for omega-3, I believe, is on the order of 300 to 500 milligrams. It's really, really low, the daily intake. So you could have like 1 can of mackerel once or twice per week and cover your omega-3 needs. It's not something you need to consume every day. I do because I like it, and also because I have a heart condition and because I want the anti-inflammatory benefits of it. So I eat half a can on a daily basis, or have just a few oysters for the zinc and copper, and also omega-3s. But to cover your needs, then, a little goes a long way. So a small bite is sufficient. Yeah, thanks. Love the program. I do too. There are some amazing results there. I wish more people would post in the community and brag about the results, but at least they're sending me emails and bragging and spreading the word on social media. So it's an amazingly effective way to train, since it's a systematic a process that evolves with you. It's not a static program. But people just want to be told what to do, and that's fine, I guess, but it's also a shame, instead of taking the time to figure this out for yourself. Okay. Oh, there's a long question here. Okay, it's a Norwegian question. I'm going to have to translate it into English, since this is the international program. I don't know, you Norwegian users. Do you not know that I have a Norwegian program, Det siste programmet? If you don't, then let me know and I can transfer you there. We had the Norwegian Zoom call at 5 p.m. today. Okay, advice for training someone with arthritis. My wife is 24 and has had arthritis since she was 5, and she's very stubborn and doesn't want to listen to the fact that she needs to start easy and progress, have smaller range of motion. Do you have any other advice? She doesn't take cortisone because she doesn't have a lot of swelling and doesn't want to inject herself with that. I can fully support that. I think cortisone is a horrible, horrible substance to inject into your body. And it's a very primitive way to treat an inflammatory condition. But yeah, that's basically, she needs to start low and be, have lighter loads, low reps probably, and increase loads within a low rep range. High reps can actually aggravate things. She needs to have slow contraction speeds, so no impulse, ballistic movements. Stay within a pain-free range of motion is advisable. But of course, if she's stubborn and doesn't want to listen, then what can you do? She needs to want it herself. Believe me, I've tried. I have. It's something called a proximity principle that you can usually not help the ones closest to you. They won't listen to you for some reason. My wife has at least gravitated towards listening more to me, but she's kind of doing her own thing most of the time. She will ask me once in a while, and it's of course the most gratifying periods is when she tells me that she's figured out something that really works for her. It took her a long time to arrive at this conclusion, but she's finally cracked the code. And I can say that I told you that 5 years ago. That happens all the time. But, I think people just need to figure it out for themselves. It's something about taking ownership for their own decisions. They don't want to be told what to do. So yes. Yeah, that's so true with the wife. People are just blowing up in the comment section. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. But it's the same. It's not a girl thing. It's this, I can be stubborn as hell if she tells me something that I should be doing, or, why don't you do this or consider that? And no, I can figure this out for myself. And a few months later, oh, I guess you were right all along. Okay, another question. Here we go. What do you think about combining lengthened partials and Myo-Reps? Lengthened partials, I'm not convinced that they actually do something beyond the beginner stage. And not all muscle groups will respond to this anyway. I also think doing partial reps at the lengthened part of the range of motion is going to increase calcium ion influx and cause more muscle damage, and thus fatigue and increase recovery needs. And it's all tension. It's all mechanical tension. So I just don't buy the hype, and neither do several researchers I've discussed this with that are actually researching this topic. They're still not convinced. It might have some effects, temporary effects, but it's not going to be a game changer that some people make it out to be. And perhaps I'm proven wrong. So from might help, can't hurt perspective, feel free to try it out. But it's it's not going to change how I approach my training. I'm not suddenly going to just stretch everything. There risks and benefits of everything. So, but you can definitely combine them for sure. Try it. See if it works better. I tend to doubt it, but go ahead. It's the shiny object syndrome, I think. There's nothing new in training, unfortunately. Only nuance and understanding of the interaction between these mechanisms. That's what I think. Lisa says, yes, it's not a girl thing. Definitely not a girl thing. Not a girl thing. It's just, I'm a coach. I've trained 5,000 people. I still can't tell my wife what to do. She needs to figure it out for herself. Been there, yes. Can we do Myo-Reps before going on a vacation, like maybe on all days before the vacation, to make enough damage so it can last for 1 to 2 weeks on vacation? Well, you can go on vacation and get a really painful sunburn and then come back home and tell me if that was better than just having a progressive increase in sun exposure. It's the exact same question. No, there's no benefit of inducing more muscle damage because that's going to require more damage repair. It's not going to cause more muscle growth. So no, I understand the thought process. It's the fitness fatigue model that you're just gonna strategically overtrain or overreach and then rest and come back stronger. But you're only recovering the fatigue you induced. So it's a continuous process where you need to manage the fatigue, not chase it. Because just, perhaps you're going to get a slightly better stimulus, but you're also going to have to rest until all of the fatigue is gone before you can add another stimulus. So it's not going to carry you over, because during the time that you need to be resting to recover from all of the muscle damage, some of that damage repair is going to eat some of the damaged muscle fibers. So you're probably going to end up in a worse place afterwards. But it's yeah, I know it's been I used to think so myself. You can certainly push the volume higher because you know you're going to be recovering better, taking a few days off. But I wouldn't push it into muscle damage overtraining territory. But you can certainly, since we're trying to stay at the lower ends, like the lower boundaries of volume here, then there's certainly room for adding more. And before going on a vacation where you know you won't be training for a while, then you can certainly do that. But I'm not gonna sit here and guarantee that it's going to provide better results than just normal training. Again, if you recall from that volume presentation where one group was training 6 weeks on, taking 3 weeks off. And after 24 weeks, they had the same gains as the group that was training 24 weeks without any breaks. So there's some balancing going on with when you're resting and recovering, you're also increasing the sensitivity to stimulus. There was a recent study actually released that after a few weeks of every other day training, like high frequency training, after 10 days, the muscle fibers had regained sensitivity, and like after the training period of, I believe it was 8 or 10 weeks, then the anabolic signaling was really diminished. So the stimulus wasn't really strong enough compared to week 1 or 2, which is to be expected. Like that's a normal part of the process. But after 10 days of rest, the anabolic signaling was back to baseline. So this might explain why row splits do tend to work for some, depending on how it's set up, obviously. But it also explains why it probably doesn't matter as much. If you're taking a few days extra rests, then you're just recovered better and sensitivity to another stimulus is increased. So we have more room to play with these variables. I also used to think we should be training as often as possible. I was the high frequency guy, and now I realized, well, we can probably rest slightly more and stay at the lower end of the spectrum and still get good gains, because now you're ensuring that you're fully recovered. Age-old question, discussion on frequency and volume on a weekly basis. Still valid recommendations of 10 to 20 weekly sets per body part. I'm not really sure how to answer that question, honestly, because I mean, I believe I've spent hours of going through this in the different modules and wrote some articles on the individual variability in response to a certain type of volume. So it's like, how quickly should cars drive on roads? It's such a general, no, I don't think it's a valid recommendation, unless you just want to be told what to do. And this whole program, no offense, buddy, because I can certainly understand the question. But I get so frustrated. I don't want you to think there's going to be a standardized answer for how much and how often. I want you to figure this out for yourself. I can't sit here and tell you how much sun exposure you're going to need to get a suntan. It's the same question. It's like asking, so do you think 10 to 20 minutes of sunlight is the best for getting a suntan? Where in the world do you live? Are you Caucasian or black? How much sun exposure are you used to? Are you using sunscreen? Are you suntanning in the morning or midday? Just so you understand my frustration, because it's like asking that type of question. How much sun exposure should I it's a valid recommendation. So it's an age-old question, but it's the wrong question. You're starting at the wrong end. You have to. It's like, how much protein should I eat? Yes, there are ranges. I can say 10 to 20 weekly sets per body part, but it doesn't consider proximity to failure. It doesn't consider stimulus to fatigue ratio. It doesn't consider individual recoverability. It doesn't consider frequency per muscle group. So is it 20 sets on Monday and nothing for the rest of the week? Or is it 10 sets Monday and Thursday? Just so you understand, it's the completely wrong question to ask. For whom? For me, for you, for Lisa here. For Lisa, it would definitely be wrong. If she's doing 3 sets once per week per muscle group, then 4 or 5 sets would be the next step. The 20% increase would be way more productive than jumping to 3 times the volume that she's doing now, 4 times the volume. So look at what you're doing now. Progressively, strategically add more and manipulate frequency to account for the volume if needed, and see if you are progressing, because that tells you whether the volume frequency combination is working for you. So yeah, sorry for the rant, but that's the exactly why I created this program, because I just can't. Sorry. Okay, next question. What will you prefer from being on a cut? Would you go fast up in calories, or would you add in calories little by little to not spill over with fat, or would it just be inevitable? That's a good question. I think I gradually increased my calories, but I was like 1900 calories. I probably should have increased calories way faster than that. I should have recalculated my maintenance, increased to slightly below that, and then gradually increased from there. But there's certainly merit to the idea of transitioning to higher calories slowly and not jumping straight into a surplus. Because there are so many metabolic processes and digestive processes and things that need to normalize depending on the duration of the cut and the extent of the cut, the deficit, and how quickly you lost weight and how much weight you lost and the body fat percentage you ended up at, and how exhausted and fatigued you are. So I would, if your calories are really low and you have all symptoms of a low metabolism, even hypothyroidism, then you should probably increase it quickly to close to an estimated maintenance level, considering that the maintenance level will probably be slightly below what you calculated to be, because there's metabolic slowdown as you diet as a natural adaptive response. But then from there, probably add 100 to 200 calories per week and just monitor your weight and body fat percentage, and stay, if you see that weight is increasing too quick, like at first the weight would jump straight up because glycogen and water retention and all that stuff. But if you do it correctly, I mean, my body weight has, since New Year's, I've been increasing calories almost weekly, and I'm basically maintaining. I mean, I've added maybe 1 or 2 kilos body weight. And I started at 1900 and I'm at 3200 now. So it's a slow, systematic process again. We're just adding little by little and seeing how I respond. And now I'm just like sweating all the time. And, yesterday I had some candy and my body temperature just shot up like crazy. I was sweating. I had to open the windows in the middle of winter. And so it's, go slow, but definitely expect that the body will adapt, and you probably need to be raising calories further. Do you have any tips for training after a meniscus surgery? The meniscus was sutured. I'm not comfortable with advising on injury rehab after surgery, so I suggest you work with a specialist. It's like slow process, patience, using exercises that gradually increase range of motion. It's not something I can just sit here and describe. I have had athletes and clients with knee surgery and hip surgery and back surgery and shoulder surgery, and I've also had my own shoulder surgery. So it's a really slow, patient process where you need to work one-on-one with someone in person and see what's going on and be aware of signs of flare-ups and inflammation or pain or whatever. So I don't want to provide general tips for a specific problem. Opinion and reflections on hypertrophy-specific training as strong contributor a long time ago and DC training. DC training split is a good thing. Volume is a good thing. I don't like going to failure on all. If you understand Myo-Reps, it's diverging from that for good reason. I don't think it's a good idea to go to failure 3 times in a rest pause set. I'm writing an ebook on that, so I'm going to explore that topic further. Hypertrophy-specific training, 3 days per week, full body, progressing from 15 to 10 to 5 reps. Linear periodization, basically. It's still a good overall model, and I could, just as easily recommend someone to follow that, but I don't think there's merit to the idea that we should be going from 15 to 10 to 5. I think we can just pick a rep range and stay there. I even think we can have a combination of 5s and 15s and have great progress from that. I also don't think we should be resting for 10 to 14 days every 6 to 8 weeks. But other than that, it's a very good way to train. I spent many years doing HST. It was a mini cut in 7 weeks. I went from 84 kilos to 76 kilos, and I'm on 2,050 calories and have a lot of energy now, and I'm gaining strength in the gym. Well, that's great. But I would still slowly add calories and see. You might be surprised at your body weight. 2,500 would be an expected maintenance calorie intake. Should spinal erectors be trained concentrically and eccentrically? Why doesn't anyone seem to? Is isometric enough? Best exercises for them. Well, it's because we don't really want to add a lot of shear forces to the spine due to the spinal segments and the discs, where bending and twisting and contorting the spine, under loading, compressive and shear force loading is generally frowned upon. We shouldn't be doing that a lot. But if you're doing like on a back extension and just locking your hips in and moving dynamically, then for sure you can do that. Mostly isometric stabilizing, but some dynamic movements can be fine if you're not putting compressive forces on it. Man, I love to hear you talk about everything. You're a true amazing person. You are a really brilliant man, Berlia. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you saying that. I have my cognitive biases and imposter syndrome with the best of them, so it's always good to hear that you think so. I'm really dumb on some things, so I'm well aware of my strengths and limitations and weaknesses, I guess. But it's a work in progress. How do you follow the fat percentage changes in it? Waist, centimeters, scales to measure fat percentage, caliper measurements, how often to measure? This is covered in the program. I have a separate module on that. Waist measurement is the easiest for people, but I at least recommend to get some calipers. Electronic scales are very unreliable. You need to be very consistent with hydration and time of the day and all conditions. And the more athletic you are, the more muscle mass you have, the less reliable they are. So they can be used more of the more expensive. I'm not even talking about the in-home models, but more of the gym or medical models. They can be used. You should be measuring on a weekly basis, I think, and body weight at least 3 times per week. And generally, I'm just going to have to refer you to the modules where this is covered. Do you have some files or something you have written about paradoxes affect more about life and more of your philosophical thinking and mindset? Well, there are some modules about mindset mapping, goal setting in the program. Articles on my site. I have some stuff shared there. My Instagram. I have a whole mindset mental coaching certification planned. It's in Norwegian at the moment. I'm gonna launch it in Norway. I'm discussing this with someone in America to perhaps launch it as either an add-on or separate thing internationally. Nothing decided yet. But I tend to share my thinking in the newsletters and articles and on social media. So if that's something you're interested in, then just follow me there. I will also make an effort to share more about it in future articles. But yeah, I really hope I can get all of the. I've written a lot of stuff on, mindset and thinking and how to change and create change and how to manage our thinking better. So I hope that will become reality. Your thoughts on flywheel training for size? Yeah, it's a very interesting way to train. I mean, there's a huge eccentric overload component there, so it's going to be way more fatiguing for sure. But I would definitely experiment with it, for sure. That's my thoughts. You're welcome, probably hearing it a lot, but since Espen from AFPT told about you, I've been following and using a lot of your advice and checked if they work for me or not, and have found Cliff, Eric, Menno that I follow now, thanks to you. That's good to hear. How do we get in it, and how does the coaching for mindset work? I'm from Norway. This is going to be at nihi.no. It's a Norwegian school where we had planned to launch it just, now in January, February. But due to some scheduling constraints, we couldn't make it work. So we're going to launch it in late August this year. I think you can read about it on the site, nihi.no. So it's going to be a combination of physical, practical sessions and online material and videos and reading. So I will send out newsletters with information about this when we get there, but you can also check that website. All right, I'm gonna have to quit now. I really, really appreciate all the questions. I mean, this has been one of the most popular Zoom calls so far, and I'm really happy to see it. I hope I didn't come across as too frustrated or annoyed at some of the questions here, but really, there's a lot of material in the program. There are 2 pages of training modules, so you have to check out the content there, and don't be lazy and just ask the questions without doing your own due diligence. That's first order of business. Having said that, I completely understand that there's a lot of stuff and it can be complicated. So don't hesitate to send me questions or ask questions, but at least, see if you can first find the answer in the course. So yeah, hope it was helpful and you got something out of it. And I wish you the best in your strength training endeavors and dieting efforts. Thank you for attending and have a great rest of your Sunday.